Today we are revisiting the 14th best Game Boy game of all time, according to critics, and determining if it's still worth your time. This is Final Fantasy Legend 2. Final Fantasy Legend 2 is a sci-fi turn-based RPG where you and your three best friends jump between worlds, go through different dungeons, fight a ton of monsters, humanoids, and zombies, meet NPCs that can be pretty witty and funny, and you fight a ton of big and bad guys that want to end the world. This game is weird, man, in a great way. I definitely wasn't vibing with it at the beginning because I felt I wasn't getting any stronger. I didn't understand how to get stronger. I didn't really get which weapons to use, how the robot mechanic worked, how the monster mechanic worked. Everything was very overwhelming. But after reading a bunch of guides on GameFAQs, I slowly started understanding the game and it was well worth it. Okay, so let's get into it a bit. You don't gain any experience when you fight. Instead, your mutant and human characters gain stats randomly, or they gain stats by defeating or hitting an enemy with a specific weapon type. So, for example, if you want your human to be an agility fiend, you need to equip agility weapons like sabers and rapiers and hit enemies with them. After every fight, there's a slight chance you will raise that character's agility stat. Or if you're going with the mana route, which is like the magic route, you need to use magic spells, magic weapons to have a chance at raising your mana stat. Your monster characters, on the other hand, don't really learn any abilities and you can't equip anything to them. Instead, after defeating monsters, there's a chance for that monster to drop its meat and then you feed it to your monster and they will transform to a totally different beast. That sometimes is a great thing, but sometimes is the worst thing. Look at this toad! I mean, what do I do with it? And then there's your robot character who gains stats depending on their equipment. And I don't want to bore you anymore, I'm sorry, but honestly, if you do try this game out, just knowing what I just told you is more than I knew going in, and it really does make a difference. Definitely have the GameFAQs guide on hand when you do play. You don't need a guide for the story though. It's pretty straightforward, but I don't mind that for these Game Boy games honestly, because it's hard to tell a good story in such limited space. The game starts with a bang though. Your father abandons you as a child without much explanation and you grow up missing him dearly. Eventually you are old enough, I guess, to grab your three best friends and go on an adventure to find your papa. This is the point where you choose your character's classes as well. You quickly learn about the Magi. These are 77 stones that are scattered across the universe and you need to gather them before big bad guys do. Because if you have all 77 stones, then you can bring Armageddon to the world. And since you're a good little lad, you will prevent that from happening. The whole moving around worlds was cool because Square didn't have to explain all of the different environments in the game. You're in a regular fantasy world first, but then you're in the land of giants, and then you're in an underwater world. There's also a desert world, of course, and so on. This gave them a bit of liberty, and I appreciate how they used it. Speaking of Square, Final Fantasy Legend 2, of course, is not part of the Final Fantasy mainline games. This Legend series is actually the start of the Saga series, and the game is called Saga 2. Okay, I'm sorry about this. Hihu Densetsu in Japan. This is just another one of Square's spin-off series they were pushing to capitalize on their meteoric rise in the gaming world after Final Fantasy blew everyone away. Credit to them, honestly, they didn't put out half-assed games. They dedicated good directors and good developers in small teams to make great spin-off series. This is also one of the best looking and sounding Game Boy games I've ever played, to be honest. Kenji Ito, who I love, is the co-composer here alongside Nobuo Uematsu, and my not so hot take is that this is the best OST in any Game Boy game, period. Just listen to this. So good. The art direction is great too. They really didn't hold back on making weird and unique monsters. They look really good as well, and every design is awesome. It's hard to make dungeons look particularly amazing on the Game Boy, but you spend most of your time in battle and the creatures are the main focus. But holy crap, are there so many random encounters. I mean, a few times I had back to back encounters. That's 4 encounters in a row. I almost quit right there. It was terrible. I wish you the best of luck when you try this game, that the RNG gods don't curse you with 10,000 random encounters before going to the next town or getting out of a dungeon. But is the game worth it in 2024? I think so, honestly. It's a big struggle to understand its mechanics, but the game has a lot of charm and a lot of content. Sure, you can beat it in about 8 hours, but you can always run it back and change the classes of your party to have a totally different experience. I've seen people run 4 robots, which kind of sounds crazy, or like 2 humans and 2 mutants, or 2 monsters and 2 robots. There's a lot of different options to make the experience of the game unique to you, and that's very, very cool to me. Finally, is this game better than Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3? No. We'll find one though. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you can be ready to see my next Best Game Boy Games review. And why don't you let me know in the comments what your favorite Game Boy game is. Gracias y adiós.